Today is very special because we're conducting our very first interview. The Pitch Fil Fund was founded in 2009, so it's been around for 14 years now.
Yes.
And it's just gone back in person, which is really exciting. It aims at seeing adaptation of the Bible on the big screen, and it's also aimed at emerging filmmakers, which is really exciting. And just a little bit about you. Obviously, we're here with Luke Walton. You're the director of the Pitch Fil Fund. You've produced more than 15 short films. You have a background in acting and 2 degrees in law and theology. What was the beginning for you? What made you start the Pitch Fil Fund?
So, I've been asked to look at, by a charity, how would you encourage artists to think about Bible and Bible stories afresh for a new generation. And so I suggested commissioning basically as the model, but I did a couple of fashion shows, some stained glass windows, some installations, some sculpture, a bit of theatre, but film has been my passion since Cruella de Vil threatened to kill the puppies, basically, and I was quite...
Why the Bible in particular? Like, we know the Bible is such an inspiration from literature to any form of art, really, and a lot of paintings, but... And even in film, I think in film is a little less maybe studied or maybe less highlighted, the inspiration from the Bible. So why the Bible specifically?
Well, first of all, for film as a form, the very first films that were made virtually, other than a train arriving at a platform, started to tell the Bible stories. So we've been making stories that have come from Bible themes since the 1890s, so a long time. The earliest films, and a lot of the silent epics went around that, and then it's come in kind of waves in different periods. Different technology has brought in different forms of film. But the other reason that I think it's brilliant for a film fund is because what filmmakers are looking for are 2 things, right? They're looking for the right support. That can be money, that can be input, that can be development. And they're looking for an idea, and the idea needs to be in commons. You mustn't have any copyright issues.
Yeah.
And the genius thing about the Bible is it's not in copyright.
I never thought about that.
Ask, what do you think about religion in general as a tool for storytelling, as a means to narration, as a medium for a story? Because religion can be quite a powerful tool to share values, to create beliefs, and it has really shaped our world, our history. So what's there in religion, in the way it's been portrayed, inherited, that makes it a unique medium for storytelling?
Well, that does vary between the great world religions as to how much iconic art is allowed. So historically within Islam and Judaism, of course, depictions of God or people tends to be much more muted or forbidden. So you get wonderful patterns and great architecture, but you don't get the same stories. Hinduism, of course, would have a lot of gods and a lot of pictures. And look at the Indian film industry, which basically kind of rolls out versions of different ancient Indian scripts and scriptures. Christianity has from its earliest times commissioned art. The earliest artwork was probably at Duros Europa, which is in Syria, and it's around a baptistry, and it's probably about 72 AD, so really, really early. So the depiction of the Christian stories and putting the stories into artwork has been around for a long time. Religion as a whole can obviously, all ways of living life can be used for ill and for good. But at their most effective, they take a very ancient thing, which is telling story, which is how we learn. We learn through story.
How do we find that space to be creative, to look for innovation?
Asks the interviewer sat in a coffee shop. Plugging can be really good. Going somewhere we've not been before, or we've overlooked, or that's again some of the reason why the Bible. Maybe we heard something when we were in primary school, or long ago, or family thing, or something, or somebody else's wedding, or maybe we heard some story, but maybe we've never really gone there, never read anything. And sometimes going to something completely new, unfamiliar, is a great trigger for. That's quite like this thing that I was thinking the other day. So, and that can apply to a newspaper article or to anything. So curiosity is the big thing. I'd always say, be curious, ask questions of what you're reading, what you're hearing. Get some space, get some time out. Everyone needs time.
It feels like a lot. Obviously, we always go back to the Bible. So you told us like why the Bible for you, but like why do you think? Obviously, there's nothing really original in literature or in film anymore or ever. Why is it that there's such a kind of strong pull towards the Bible specifically and towards these stories? It feels like they're never going to be outdated in a sense.
Well, I think it's because a couple of things. First of all, lots of it is about real people and real places and real relationships. And those things, love, hate, greed, loss, forgiveness, those things, that we still recognise those. So they're timeless. Secondly, I think when the people who wrote them down had very particular ways of recording them. They had to be incredibly careful with how much they wrote. There is no kind of, you just buy some extra memory now. Who gives a monkeys, take some extra pictures, really. I mean, the difference between when I was a kid, when I had to buy the film and pay for it to be developed, until I learned how to do it, and now where you just get your phone and click, 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 click. Okay, so there's that kind of lots of stuff. Whereas when these things were written down, even the papyrus that you were writing on and the ink you were writing was incredibly precious. So you take time, you're considered, you're thoughtful. You put down what really matters, the core of the element, the heart of the matter. So I think there's something about that distilled wisdom over years and the enduring human stories. Those would be things I think probably...
Yeah, that's very fascinating. And obviously, like we said, there's a lot of Bible inspiration within the film industry, like the Hollywood film, for example. Is there one specific film you would say that kind of speaks to you in this sense, or one example that comes to mind?
There are a whole cluster of films that I would point to. I'm a huge fan of films which have they have redemption type stories within them.
Yeah.
And you can identify characteristics that may be characteristics that mimic a Jesus character. So obviously the classic swords and sandals, we're back in the year dot or whatever, and we're seeing Moses part the Red Sea, or we're seeing Jesus in the Holy Land, or whatever it is. But then there's also the Shawshank Redemption, in which we've got an innocent man who's put in prison, who makes friends with people, who tells about life beyond the grey walls, who speaks of justice and brings down the injustice when he escapes by this death-like experience through a tunnel of poo, and escapes out the other side. And then, interestingly, just a little note there, when he breaks out, Andy Dufresne, he does this iconic thing, Into the Rain. Do you remember? In the crucifix form, which is then copied in Pleasantville and is then copied by Gibson in The Passion of the Christ.
Is it? Fantastic.
There you go. There's a little fun.
Okay, so on crucifixion, so you guys have mentioned a lot of examples that are, I would consider drama, right? So my question now would be, what is the space for comedy?
Obviously, comedy has occurred in the past, and famously, Life of Brian was one of those more controversial. I mean, there's a lot of comedy if you go looking in any sphere of life. So if I have a story that's a tragedy, we might think, I've got to be very serious about this. But we can equally think of films which are basically tragic, but we laugh. We laugh at the tragedy within them. But there is also space for funny stories. So Carolyn Goodyear won our first comedy our award that we gave, of the two we gave out this year, the comedy and a drama one. And her story, it tells a story of a downtrodden wife who has got an absolute jerk of a husband. And basically she would love to be rid of him. And then he does a really dumb thing and hacks off King David, actually, which is a kind of death sentence for him. So she goes and does something really sensible, which is give away all of his things to King David to make up for it. And when she gets back, he's having a 7-day bender with his mates. And when he comes round from his bender hungover, she says, by the way, I gave all your stuff away. And he drops dead from a heart attack, which is exactly what happened. That's the story. And there is something comedic about that. I mean,
is there any story that people seem to relate more, or just take as an inspiration, or a theme that is kind of overarching?
Redemptive material is always going to be forgiveness, or lack of forgiveness is always going to have a part to play, because I think we really care about that. We screw up, we we bust up our friendships, and then we want to get them back again. We hope we'll be forgiven. We want to forgive others. I think that's quite deep within us. So people will often go to those. There are the iconic characters that people go to. They probably overlook a little bit some of the what could be described as teaching materials.
Yes, another question that I would find very interesting to explore with you is about the morality of the Bible and the stories we find in the Bible, and how absolutistic most of the times that morality is when it's narrated by the stories that we find in the book. So how do you, as a storyteller, someone that I assume thinks that there is a complexity in human relationships and there's no such thing as black and white, how do you approach morality when you are creating that material?
Well, actually, the material, when we're talking about Judeo-Christian scriptures, is really mixed and complicated, and it isn't black and white, and it has lots of shades of grey and everything in between. And people are complicated.
Obviously, like we said, it's gone back in person this year, and it was online because of the pandemic.
Yes.
What's kind of the difference? Do you notice a big difference in that because of the community aspect of the Pitch Fil Fund?
Well, when we were all locked down, actually, lots of people were shut at home, and lots of people went, right, better write something. So we had quite a bumpy year in 2020.
That's interesting.
A little bit of a fallback 21. 22 was strong again. And I love our process because from the get-go we wanted to encourage filmmakers, and we looked around at lots of different models, visited festivals and different initiatives, and we've tried to learn from the best and bring some of those things with us. We want people who submit to us to always have an opportunity for feedback. So we feedback to everybody who wants it, and we will do that. We have a particular way we do a feedback session, which is great fun. We get a group of filmmakers together, we show their pitch that they've submitted, everybody we tend to do it online, everyone does kind of a round of applause or whatever, and then the filmmaker gives their own reflections now on what they've done, and the other filmmakers reflect back to them what they thought of the pitch, and slowly it begins to draw out some of the issues that may have held it back or weren't the strongest of it, and then we will share some of our panel of experts who've graded and made notes on everything. We'll share some of those views, and more often than not we'll find that there's a consistency between that group feedback and the notes we've got, but peer feedback is so helpful.
Yeah.
So then we have an in-consideration list, and we offer them a masterclass on resilience, because the thing we think is really tough is that you get into this industry and you get knocked over and knocked over and knocked over, and you've got to keep getting up, you've got to keep going back, and you've got to believe in yourself. Caroline Goodyear came back to us, I think it was her 10th time back.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing story. And you've got to have that resilience. So we do that for the long list. Then for the short list, which is now down to 10 comedies and 10 dramas, we run a masterclass day with the wonderful Jasmine Morrison, who's now at Sky. She helps us with the development of a pitch deck, so that you know how to put a pitch deck together for your film, and that's going to come into play if you're a finalist, so that's useful, and a little bit about film financing, because that's going to be useful if you don't keep going, because you need to find some finance, right?
Absolutely.
Then for the top 10, we're very pleased to be sponsored by English Lakes Hotels, who take us whiskers off to the English lakes. How lovely.
Beautiful.
Not quite like the northern Italian lakes. Okay. But the English lakes, they've got their own romance. And we go for a masterclass day, and we're joined by, at the moment, Justine Hart of the London Script Factory. Joins us to do a bespoke teaching on developing a short form film. And we do various pitching classes as well, so you can actually practice pitching out loud, and that's for the final 10, 5 comedies, 5 dramas, and then they come and pitch live to a panel.
Yeah.
So that's a lot in there, and for the ones that don't get funded, they get individual feedback from Justine, who's present when they're pitching live in the room, hears the judges, gives them feedback. So all the way through the line, we have coaching available for them between the residential and the finals. That's a good package. At its best, the film industry is really supportive, really kind, and I'm grateful for our for our experts who are on the panel. This year we had Indira Varma from Game of Thrones, we had John Wardle, who was the head of NFTS, we had Bemi Sola Ikamelo, and she's BAFTA Comedy Director, award winner, who's absolutely brilliant. I mean, she is fantastic in the room and brilliant in her feedback. And we had Hester Roth, who produced Boiling Point. Those people will come and give to a kind of community that's getting together. So that's one of the reasons I think people get involved and get stuck in. And after we've given out the funding, we then go into a development phase and we work with script consultants. One of the script consultants we work with is Carol Griffiths, who worked on Fargo, West Wing, Friends, Will and Grace.
The question is, was there kind of a need to create this filmmaker award because of the current situation in the film industry? How did that kind of come
Two
to
things.
be?
Certainly wanted to encourage female filmmakers to feel at home. It was important to me that we were clearly offering a level playing field, which we've always tried to do. Building confidence it's a really difficult thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've always been open to everybody. Guys just have historically had this kind of, I own this, I have the right to do this. And it's giving women the assurance that, no, that's just not that. And anybody of any perspective can come and pitch to us. And we're very open to all genders. Also created it because Lucy Sher, who is the founder of the London Script Factory and the LGBTQ+ London Film Festival, was on our panel for a number of years as she died. And she'd been a great friend to the process. She was always great fun. She danced the night away with us, and we wanted to do something in her memory that was about the kind of person she was, and she was passionate about female filmmaking, and so we felt that was super important. We could do two things at once. We could honour Lucy, and we could encourage others with it. So. And now we have attached some finance with that, so we were able to give her £1,000 to go. And filmmakers touch on every aspect of life, and that nothing's out of bounds. Right?
Yeah.
We explore all of life. So I hope I bring all of my experience to a piece.
Yeah. What is one film that you would say has really influenced you? I mean, maybe it doesn't have to be your favorite film or the first film you saw, but the film that kind of made you go like, this is art.
Ooh, this is art.
Or this is filmmaking.
This is why I want to do this.
So there's several different things there.
You can say it more than
Nosferatu
once.
the Vampire I was terrified by, which was kind of like, I thought, ooh, that's really cool. I've always loved adventure films, and some of those I've kind of always gone, oh, that's wonderfully romantic, I'd like to be in that. But there's a film called Missing, which very few people have seen. It's Sissy Spacek and Jack Lemmon, so it's quite an old film now. I remember seeing the poster, and on the basis of the poster thought, oh, that'll be the most exciting. I went in to watch it, and it's all about South American injustice. It was about Junta and the government making people disappear, hence the missing. Just people just disappeared without trial, without any due process, and never found again. And I'd grown up safely in my little bubble, my part of the world, and I was totally shocked that was a reality for so many people. It bumped me out of that, and I went to a teacher at school and said I'd had this experience, and he'd talked about something called Amnesty International, and I joined Amnesty International then, and I've been a member ever since. The rest of
We have perhaps in movies, we feel our responsibility as humanity, this collective responsibility to tell stories, to remember, so not forget, perhaps also to be critical about our past.
Yes, I think we do. I think all art forms bring fresh perspective and want to reframe things and ask questions about them for now, for then, but they also rediscover things, and it turns out that we're not the pinnacle of the human race. That's a real danger we fall into, and that's why we repeat history, and that's why it goes around in circles, because people don't listen. It has to repeat itself. So I think George Lucas said that film is the most modern of all the art forms. It's also the most complex. But just because it's modern doesn't mean that we're actually in itself creating something historic as well. So there is a legacy within it. Enterthepitch.com.
Yes. We'll link everything down below. So
Make sure people know.
absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.